Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today, our program is about the one and only New York Law Journal, and our guide for talking about the New York Law Journal is Susan DeSantis, and she is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the New York Law Journal. Susan, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm sure most of our listeners are interested to learn more about, or learn about, if they don't know about it already, the New York Law Journal. So tell us about, what is the goal of the New York Law Journal and what you are trying to accomplish every day?
So every day we're trying to write the kind of stories that lawyers have to read, no matter how busy they are, that they have to take the time to read, because these stories will help them in their practice, help them write their briefs, give them, court precedents. So we're always looking to be essential. That's my definition of what's a good law journal, one that's essential.
And just for our readers who are not familiar with it, just in a nutshell, describe what the New York Law Journal is.
So we come out in print Monday to Friday, and it's a couple sections every day with decisions of interest, as well as a front news section that covers the news that happened that day. And we're online, and online we are coming out all the time. So I'm trying to get a new story out to people several times a day. I change my top stories 5 times a day so that people see 3 different stories every time they come to the Law Journal, if they come, say, an hour or 2 apart.
And sometimes I tell non-lawyers that you're like what the Wall Street Journal is to the business community, but you're essential reading for lawyers every day about what's happening in the law and with the law.
It's interesting. The relationship of the Law Journal with lawyers is fascinating, because the Law Journal is really a part of the legal community. I mean, we're an independent journalism organization, but at the same time, at all these events, people want me to be at these events and be part of it. And so we're 2 different things. We're part of the community, and at the same time, we need to be objective and write what's truly happening.
And there may be political news or legal proceedings arising out of the general news or a political event, but you're going to write about that from a lawyerly sense, about the Constitution, about rights, about criminal procedure, about other legal issues, and how they affect those events.
Right. So we're not looking to do the same story the general circulation papers are doing. So we're not going to maybe be writing about the victims. So say we were writing about the New York City, something that's going on with housing in New York City. We wouldn't be necessarily finding the victims of lead paint. We would be writing, what arguments are their lawyers using? Why do they think this case is significant? So it's a totally different approach, even to the same story.
And that could be true of immigration, the elections, the Mueller investigation, things
Correct.
along that line.
It's true.
Supreme Court nominations.
Right. It's true of everything we write. We're really looking for, what does the lawyer need to know? We don't write too many feature stories. We do write some, as you've noticed, but we're not we're not looking to kind of be entertainment. We're looking to be, as you know, the word I used before, essential.
But there might be issues involving patents or entertainment law that are important legal news as well.
Correct. I mean, I think about what kind of lawyers we have in New York, and obviously we have almost every kind of lawyer, but I look at, well, what do we have a predominance of, and therefore, what do they need to know? And I also visit with law firms. I try to visit with a law firm once or twice a week so that I can ask them directly, what is it you read and why? And I can kind of tailor what we do to what they want to read about, because that's really what we're here for. We're not really here to serve some public good. We're here to give the lawyers what they need to know so that they remain loyal subscribers.
And I think you mentioned earlier, you want to remain a must-read publication for lawyers in New York and beyond every day.
Correct. So, sometimes when I think about our audience, lawyers who have been in the profession a long time, the New York Law Journal is like a tradition. Sometimes their parents are lawyers, and they grew up with the New York Law Journal in the house, and they have a habit of reading it every day. They can't be without it. I've heard this explained over and over. How they pull out their New York Law Journal. It's part of their morning every day, and I'm talking now about print. But at the same time, for young lawyers, we're also looking to write about what they need to know. So you'll see that we do a lot of stories about associates and what they get paid and what their lives are like, and how millennial lawyers are changing the workforce. That's a story I did. So those stories are widely popular too. So we see that if we write the kind of thing younger lawyers want to read about, and actually what's interesting about stories about millennial lawyers is older lawyers want to read that too, because they want to have more insight into how their workplace is changing.
And even lawyers involved, such as myself, in one or two fields may be interested in developments in a related field, or just, in developments in an unusual field that I have nothing to do with, but I have an intellectual interest and curiosity about.
Yeah, so you're pointing out to something that I think is very important. I always talk about how our stories have to be, yes, they're written for a sophisticated audience, and yes, they can be complex. But I also think about the lawyer who isn't in that particular practice area. And so I want the stories to be really clear for everybody else. And also, even if it is your practice area, don't you want to read something that is easy to access and easy to understand, and you know what we're talking about? And everybody wants to read a good narrative or a good tale, and everybody wants to read good journalism. So that's important. No matter what your practice area is.
And sometimes you just have human interest stories. And I recall you recently wrote a story about the judge who brings a helper dog to their courtroom every day.
So the dog story was very popular. People loved it. First of all, the dog is so cute. And they loved the idea of this dog. I can't remember the headline, but I think we said he's a constant presence in the courtroom, but from under the bench.
And also your story had a twist in the ending, which I don't want to reveal.
Okay. So, those kinds of, so once in a while we can do a story just for fun like that, but you have to choose those carefully. It has to be, why do you do that story? You do that story because a whole lot of people probably don't know. And this dog was so well behaved that a lot of people didn't know he was there, including juries.
And at the same time, you have a lot of stories, or at least cases noted, about dog law, and they were involved in a lot of different issues. And even someone not doing about it, we may like dogs or own dogs and are curious about that.
Right. Well, the latest dog stories we've had were about the what I guess people are calling paternity leave, and
yes,
the implications of that, whether it was good for a workplace to offer that, and what were some of the downsides of doing it. So we did have fun with that, and I think paternity was a fun thing to call it. Of course, it'll be something we'll get sick of if we keep using that. But hey, if we can use it once.
So what kind of, along those lines, what kind of stories are you looking for tips on, or are you trying to write about?
So I want to know what the judiciary is doing. So some of my favorite stories this year involved telling people what's going on, especially in the Court of Appeals. So we had a story about split decisions in the Court of Appeals, that there was less consensus and more split decisions. I think that's a fascinating story. We also wrote a story that the Court of Appeals was taking fewer criminal and civil, but particularly criminal cases. They were hearing a lower percentage than they had under previous chief judges. That's fascinating, and that's really about what people need to know if they are proceeding in a case. So that's why I thought those stories were perfect. So those behind-the-scenes things that people have no other way of finding out, that's my ideal story.
And tell us about your path to becoming the editor of the Law Journal.
So, as you may or may not know, I'm not a lawyer, but I think I was exactly what the Law Journal wanted when I was hired a year ago, because I am somewhat of an expert in digital media, and I was looking to get out stories more quickly to people earlier in the day, looking for better headlines that people could easily search. And so we do have a number of lawyers on staff. So what I brought to the job and what they had already was the perfect mix. And it's been, we've been all doing really well together.
And you also have a variety of columns in the Law Journal. What do you try to cover with those columns?
So in columns, we are looking for analysis. So we are not looking for someone to summarize what happened in a court case, because anybody could look that up themselves. We're looking for them to tell us why it's significant, and we're also looking for the particular topics. Like some topics are of real interest right now. For instance, the new sexual harassment law in New York State. We can see when we look at what our readers are reading, they are fascinated by that topic and feel they need to be prepared. And so I'm interested in that. Any stories I can get on that, that go over new ground that we haven't already.
And are there other areas you would like to expand your coverage to?
By areas, you mean topics? Or?
Yeah, other topics or other tangential areas related to the what lawyers do.
Yeah, so we don't consider ourselves limited in any way by topics. We have reporters that cover business of law, and we have reporters that cover litigation, and we're deciding what stories to write on a case-by-case basis. So there's no topic that we're not doing, and there's no topic we're particularly pursuing. It's just we look at what's available every day coming out of the courts, and we decide where's the best place we could spend our time today.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll continue our discussion with Susan DeSantis, who's the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the New York Law Journal. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nass Community College, and also on the air at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This program is brought to you by Nassau Community College, which offers a paralegal studies program. Students can major in paralegal studies while earning their associate's degree, or earn a paralegal certificate if they already have a college degree. These programs can even help you start a second career as a paralegal. It's a program for anyone who wants to work in a law office assisting lawyers, the government, or a position in an insurance company. More information about full-time, part-time, days, evenings, weekends, or online courses is available by calling 516-572-7774 or by email at paralegal@ncc.edu.
Okay, man, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. Cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments, because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Show the world that you're tougher than tough. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Doxton, Easy, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. We're interviewing Susan DeSantis. She is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the New York Law Journal, published every business day for the legal community and others in the greater New York area. Susan, is your paper read around the world? Because what happens in New York may be important or interest to lawyers around the country and around the world?
Yes, it definitely is. I get emails all the time from crazy places where people are reading the New York Law Journal. But there's another way in which our stories are read everywhere because we are part of ALM. And ALM has many other publications, including American Lawyer and the National Law Journal, and stories that we write for the New York Law Journal are often picked up by these other publications. So when I have something that either I wrote or one of the reporters, and I think it's particularly important or has universal appeal, I'll make sure they know about it, and usually they do pick it up. Maybe it's on law.com. So our stories do go all over the place.
And some of the columns, you were mentioning it earlier, are written by legal experts in New York, in the New York area about a particular area of law, and they contained, as you said, great analysis to help everyone practicing in that field and even lawyers who do not. What other types of articles do you welcome from the legal community in New York?
So there are a lot of other things we are hoping to get as much of as we can. We love letters to the editor. We love opinion pieces. We call them perspectives, but, they're your usual op-ed piece. We love to publish book reviews. So there's all kinds of ways that people can get into the Law Journal. I publish tributes. So say a judge died, and maybe I would rather have a story written by someone who knew him really well than written by a objective journalist. And so they'll call, I'll hear about it, and somebody will agree to do a tribute for us. So there's kind of no limit to what we would at least consider running.
And you mentioned the web portion of the Law Journal. Is that strictly pay to search, or is part of that open to non-subscribers?
Almost all of it is for subscribers. I mean, you can try out our stories by registering on the site, and then we give you a certain number of stories a month. So there's always a way to try out our stories. Another big way we communicate with people is through our breaking news alerts and our morning alert and our afternoon alert. And I hear from lawyers all the time how happy they are because they go to work knowing what's going on already because they read our alerts. So they might not read the story, but at least they know what's happening.
And do you do anything special to encourage new lawyers or young lawyers to read your publication in whatever form on a regular basis?
Yeah, so there's a lot we do. It's really about the kind of stories we write. So when we write about associates and when we write about millennial lawyers, we get a lot of readership. So I'm assuming that some of those are those lawyers. And as I've written about, I did one story about millennial lawyers in mid-sized firms, why they were choosing mid-sized firms for the lifestyle issues. And I saw that they passed that story around to a lot of other millennial lawyers. And so it wasn't that just, older lawyers are reading about this subject. It's that we were actually getting them to read about it. So it's really story selection that can bring them in, writing about their own concerns and lifestyle issues.
And I've noticed you've recently had stories about the lawyers and depression and lawyers and suicide and lawyers and opiates and what the legal community resources available and what law firms are doing about some of those issues. Absolutely.
So we can tell that issue really resonates with readers. And I put out a story like that, and people flocked to it immediately. We did one story in which a lawyer, this was a Quinn Emanuel lawyer, you may remember, he wrote about his battle with depression, and I put a headline on it that, Quinn Emanuel partner suffers from depression and he wants everyone to know about it, because I thought that was so great and so different. And so we will do, I put a solicitation out not that long ago asking for stressed out lawyers to call me, although I didn't get a lot of stressed out lawyers, so I'm still looking.
Maybe they were too stressed to call you.
I don't know. But obviously those topics are really important, and it seems to be that there's a recognition nowadays that we have to do something about it. The legal profession has to do something about it, and I think talking about it is the beginning, right?
Because unfortunately, there are many stressed out lawyers in the legal profession.
Yeah.
And in law firms, too. What special sections are you planning in the months ahead?
So we have a few things. We put out most of these sections every year. So the biggest thing that's coming up is our New York State Bar Association annual meeting section, which is coming out at the very beginning of next year to coincide with the Bar Association meeting in New York City. In that one, what's really nice is we have the judges from each of the departments, the first department, the presiding justices of the first, second, third, and fourth department. They write about an area that's of interest to them. And also another really popular special section that we have is our Law Day special section. And this year that's about free speech and the free press. And that's the issue that our experts will be addressing for that issue.
And tell us in a moment, too, what is a day like for you in producing the next day's edition of the New York Law Journal?
So I start out by looking for what stories I can put on the inside pages, because I want to keep the front page open as late as I can. So I come up with page 6, we put opinion pieces. I do not directly handle the contributed copy from lawyers. There's another editor who handles that. So that's already done for me, and I don't handle the decisions of interest. There are other digesters and editors that are handling that part of the paper. So I start by telling our production people what I want on the inside pages. I also, the very first thing I do in the morning is I change the top so that people can see what we have that's new instead of, because if you come to the site and you see old stories, you might not realize we have new stories. So that's another thing I do right away. And then I go to a meeting. I say I go to the meeting, but it's by phone with all the other law journal editors around the country. And actually, so, some of our law journals are out of the country, Asia, London. And I look at what they have to offer that might be of interest in New York. And I pick stories from that, as well as looking at what our own reporters are doing each day. And then at the end of the day, I have to look at the pages. I mean, I don't get a lot of time to look at the pages, meaning that by the time I get them, they're due at the printer. And so I only have a very, very brief window, but it's important that I look at the pages, make sure the headlines are okay. Sometimes I have to cut the headlines to make sure they fit in print.
And the print paper is still distributed largely through the mail service?
It is. It is. So that's our absolute deadline. I mean, I don't want to be the person who doesn't get the law journal out, right? I mean, it's gone now for all these years, more than 100. I mean, I don't want to be the person that doesn't get it out. So,
and that's really how it's been going for sort of 100 years through the post office.
Yeah, so we do have an absolute deadline, and at a certain point, so you may see once in a while, you may see stories that you say, oh, I saw that online last night, but it's not in print today. Yeah, that happens, because at a certain point, I've got to cut it off and get it out there. And yet, for the web, the other day, in the census lawsuit, we had the U.S. Supreme Court rule, and it was, I think, past 8 p.m. The print edition was long gone, but we, still worked on it till about 11 o'clock at night for the web.
Okay. And we just only have about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to mention? And if you can just give us contact information for anyone who'd like to contribute to the New York Law Journal.
Okay. Let me start with the contact information. So you can email me directly. I answer all my emails eventually. And my email is DeSantis, that's DeSantis @ALM.com. I'm also on Twitter at SNDeSantis. That's another good way to follow what we're doing. And we just appreciate being such an important part of the New York legal community.
And I'm sure you're going to continue for another 100 years at least and beyond.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd like to thank our guest, Susan DeSantis, and she is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the New York Law Journal. And this is your host, Ken Landau, and I'd like to invite everyone to listen to another program on Law You Should Know next week at this same time on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also over the internet at nccradio.org, and a podcast of this and many other shows are available by searching WHPC on iTunes or Spreaker, SPREAKER.com.